Miss Olabelle Reed, a lifelong resident of Waterloo, Iowa, was born in Iowa City, 1935, the seventh child of Freeman and Isabel Wood Reed. She graduated from East Waterloo High School in 1953, obtained her BA in 1960 and MA in 1970 in elementary education from the University of Northern Iowa. She married Richard Reed from the West Side, and they had 3 lovely children. Ms. Reed was one of the first African-American teachers in the Waterloo Community School System. She devoted her endeavor to elementary education. After teaching at Longfellow, Jewett, Craig, and Cottrell Elementary Schools for 36 years, Ms. Reed finally retired in 1996. In 2010, Ms. Reed was honored a 50-year membership with the American Association of University Women, inducted into Golden Graduate Society of the University of Northern Iowa, and celebrated 50 years with Club Les Dames, a women's club she co-founded upon her graduation from college. She has worked with the African American Museum Board, Genealogy Society, and Civil War Roundtable, as well as other groups.
When and where were you born?
I was born January 30th of 1935 in Iowa City, Iowa. And I was the first child, the 7th child of my family who was born in a hospital.
We know that you would, become an educator. That's what you would become an educator. You would pursue a career in education.
Yes.
Let's talk about just a little bit how your family life influenced that, if at all. Did your mother influence you? Your father, maybe brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I would say somewhat. It was my mother that probably had some influence upon me, like enjoying learning. I would see her reading. She would read the Bible, and she reflected a lot upon her early childhood education in the South. She had very good teachers. She said they called them professors. In that particular part of Mississippi, they had a good education. Then she would tell me about learning music, the meter. She knew things that I didn't know, the meters and this and that and she would bring up these things, and she would tell us stories, not read stories, but she would recite kind of like limericks, and she would tell stories, not so much from books, because we didn't have access to that many books. And her mother had been a teacher. And then I had a minister's wife. She was a Sunday school teacher, very, very dedicated, very knowledgeable. She would have some of us to stay all night with her, and I think she had a great influence upon me becoming an educator.
If you reflect back on your K through 12 experience, was there a favorite teacher or a teacher who touched you, who might have inspired you?
I did have another teacher along, I think she had about 4th grade, and she taught geography, and I was really impressed by her, and it was really interesting. She made the subject matter just really interesting and stand out, and it made me really want to see those places. When she talked about the mountains and the all that type of thing, it just made me want to see it, even though the only places that we got to travel was to Mississippi once a year, and so we didn't get to see much of the country. But I think even then I was seeing things through others, like and the teachers, and also through reading.
Or coming through the educational system here in Waterloo that weren't so good. and that would also motivate you to become an educator?
When I was a senior, the office manager took myself and another African American girl aside. It was in the spring of the year when you turn in applications to various businesses in Waterloo, like John Deere's, Rath Packing, and others. And he said, I'm going to tell you girls right now, I'm not going to turn in your applications because I know what's going to happen to them. They aren't going to hire you. They'll just throw them away because we were Negroes, and that was such a devastating thing to me. After all these years, I still remember going over to the corner of his office and having him tell us about how they would do. And I didn't even tell my parents. I just kept things like that inside of me. I didn't learn to get out with it until I got older. And then I got mad.
Okay. Okay, now here you are, you're graduating, and you know, you get into, you enroll into college eventually. You would go to college. Let's talk a little bit about your undergraduate work and how you, when you got there, how you actually made the decision to go to college here.
I had $60 that I had saved from my income tax return. I had worked a part-time job, and I had that, and I went on up to the university up here. Well, it was a college then, and
what was it called?
Iowa State Teachers College, ISTC. And I took the bus up here and registered, and it was $40 for the tuition. We were on a quarter system. And I noticed that a lot of the kids, especially the farm, they were from small towns, farms, or they were only plunking down 11. And I said, how come you're paying only $11 and I'm paying $40? And they said, well, how come you didn't know about the discount that teachers can get? If you want to be a teacher, it's only $11. Well, I didn't know about it, but while I was in high school, it was pretty well known that I was a good student and I wanted to go to college, but nobody had ever told me of this advantage that I could have had.
Actually, you got your 4-year degree, you graduate, and where are you teaching at first? What school?
I taught at Longfellow. It had a good number of African American children, but it still was about half white and half African American. A beautiful school, and my first principal was just super. He was a young man. He had been in World War II, I think, yeah. And he was so helpful, and he was so glad to have me aboard. I just don't know what I would have done if I had gotten into a school where there had been principal and other teachers who were not receiving me well, but they did. They were all so helpful, teachers and other staff.
Yeah,
that really helped me. I did have some problems with convincing parents that I was able to teach, because, well, I had even African American parents, because they just hadn't had them. And to this day, that is a problem in Waterloo, because they just haven't had enough examples of professional people, period, and not just teachers, but doctors, attorneys, and that kind of thing. They just didn't trust them. Of course, they felt that it was better to have white because they didn't. We have problems because of the prejudices and segregations and so forth, just like they do, which has really harmed our race in particular. I think in many ways that people don't understand, but that is really true.
How did you deal with that? How did you deal with, you said it wasn't the administration, it wasn't your co-workers, other teachers, it was the parents, and in fact it was the African American parents, right?
It took several years of teaching and them actually seeing what I was doing, and I always went over and beyond the call of duty in my teaching for them to see. Finally, the reputation was getting out there that she's a good teacher, and the kids would go home and tell their parents, and I would do certain things that would involve parents. Sometimes I would visit homes on my time off to get acquainted with the parents. It didn't always ring true. I still had some problems.
Did you go to white parents' house too?
Yes.
You did. You went because you had to convince both.
Yes, especially I was in Evansdale. I remember the second school, and I got this notion I'm going to go to every home of my students, and they loved it. They really loved it. I tell you, that was a community that had a lot of bad things said about it, but
in Evansdale.
Yes,
okay.
When I went out there, it did used to be quite a community. But
you shifted. Okay, you're talking about this is interesting. Because how long were you at Longfellow before you would go
I was
to
there
Evansdale?
11 years.
11 years at Longfellow. Now you would go to Evansdale.
And this same principal.
What school is that?
Was moved. Yes.
Jewett. Okay.
Moved to Evansdale, and he asked for me. He needed a teacher, and so he asked if I would come out there. He had a teacher that would be leaving, and so I did. So that was a good thing that I had him in my corner. But the teachers were very, very leery of me. They just didn't know how to act. They weren't around African Americans, or colored as we were called in those days. I've been through them all.
Okay, so you were colored. Okay, that's fine.
The colored, the Negro, Afro-American, African American.
Yeah.
But once they really got to know me, and you see, I don't think, and in fact I have been told that my last school, my fourth and last school that I went to, had never had an African American.
What school is this?
This was Kittrell.
Okay.
And it's on the west side. And after my first year, during my evaluation, he was saying that.
This is at Kittrell?
Yes.
This is the principal?
Yes.
Okay.
He was so glad, he said, because of my personality, I was able to get through to the others, and if I had been one to, at the least little thing, blow up or walk out or that type of personality, we wouldn't have made it that far. I probably would have left long before I did. I think I was there 8 years.
Okay.
But
so now you have a good experience at Longfellow, and you have a pretty good teaching experience at Jewett. But did you know going into the school, Kittrell, that you'd be the first
Yes,
African-American woman teacher to ever be in that school?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Was there pressure
all
there?
These years, this was a West Side school, elementary school.
How did the
No,
parents? Did the parents come into your classroom
yes,
and stuff?
Parents, many of them would come and visit. I knew what the visiting was for, to check me out. And
they weren't bringing you an apple?
Well, the kids really loved me, and I think that went back home a lot too, when they saw that the children were accepting me. And I've always been go beyond what you have to do. In fact, sometimes I think that was maybe it was a fault of mine, but I do think it was good. I looked at those kids like they were on my level. Like, the things that I would teach them. I was just thinking the other day, I looked at a letter that someone showed me that someone had typed for them. I just couldn't believe it. It was all in capital letters, and I said, my goodness, I taught first and second graders how to address a letter and the heading. We went through all of those parts of the letter, the body and the salutation, and I did that to second graders, and we sent letters all over the country. There was a program through our little weekly newspaper that you could join, and I did for my children, and they wrote letters across the country, and then they received letters, and I couldn't believe that this was an adult and doing that. But I was just always liking to push beyond what was required, what was fun for me. I liked doing some of those things, and I think the parents, that won them over, because I started getting the reputation of being a good teacher. It took a lot of, work doing it. Most teachers don't have to go into a school as a new teacher. They just are accepted, unless, they do something that is blatantly wrong. They usually are accepted. They're the teacher. They know what they're doing. But that wasn't the case for me for a long time.
Did you experience anything as a teacher where another coworker indirectly or directly offended you or black people, maybe at a meeting or at a teachers' conference?
Yes, was one of the teachers there, and when they were going around the circle and introducing themselves and telling where their children were and reading and math, and when they got to her, she said, "Oh, our children could never be that far. I teach at Grant. That's all colored children." And then looked across the circle at me. She had forgotten that I was sitting there, and she said, "Oh, you see, we don't have the Reeds anymore." Meaning my family. I think she taught every one of my siblings that went to school, and then that was the beginning of me knowing that there was a difference. The other teachers felt sorry for her because she taught at a school that was mostly black, and they couldn't get very far. I don't think they were pushing them very far. And then I visited the school because my daughter was in first grade by that time. She started at Longfellow, but I was so glad to get her out of. When we built a home, it was in the Grant district, so she started second grade at Grant School, and I just wanted to visit her school, so I took a half day off and went over, and 3 weeks before the dismissal of school for the year, and they were busy sending all of the materials back to the classroom, back to the storerooms for the summer. And
3 weeks left.
They had 3 weeks left. And there was my daughter, the books, I was teaching out of the same books. They were, and that little unit that they had left wouldn't have taken but a few days to get finished with, but they weren't going to complete. That really hurt me because my daughter, she still, even in later years, by third grade, she was telling me about, I would discuss with her what we were doing, and we were teaching the children, one of the physical fitness things was to learn how to climb a rope. And they'd lie down on the floor in the gym and learn how to put their hands on this rope and go hand over hand until they got way up there to the ceiling. And she said, "We don't have a rope." I said, "You don't?" She said, "We're not learning how to." And I asked the teacher, "How come we aren't doing that?" And she said, "Oh, we don't have to do the things that the other schools do." Right. So that was revealing to me that there was a difference in the education of African American children and schools that had predominantly white.
Now this is interesting because as you would have this experience as an educator, a lot of stuff will come to light, and some of these encounters are really, really interesting. Do you have any similar encounters, like with, say, the children who may have acknowledged your difference in a negative way?
Yes, I remember my first day of teaching. The children were at Longfellow School. We had large windows, and these were black children, black girls, and all of a sudden I heard one of them. I was putting my materials on the board, chalkboard, getting ready for the school day to start, and one of them looked in. She said, "Look, there's a colored teacher in there." It was like, that was just something, really something. I felt like a monkey in a zoo in a cage. They were, and then they had a crowd of them that were crowding around to see me, see this teacher. And I had many times when I would go on field trips to places around town, particularly to the Waterloo Art. Well, they've changed the name. It used to be the Recreation Center, but they would always go up to my parents. I would have parents to accompany us, and they wouldn't. Here I was at the beginning of the line of children with my class, but they'd step right to one of the parents for to be the teacher. That they were shocked. But you see, it's because we haven't had, and we still don't have enough of those kind of experiences, whereas you would have minority teachers, people being the head of the class. And I still today, when I mention, and I try to do it not in a bragging way, but I just want people to know this person that you're talking to, having this real interesting conversation. I was a teacher. I taught for 36 years, and they're shocked. But I want more and more people to know that there are people who have taught, and there's still teachers out there that are teaching, but there just aren't as many, and I think that is one of the things that it hasn't moved fast enough in Waterloo.
The system, the structure, and institutions surrounding education. Today, we have a problem with is slipping in the ranks. The educational system is failing African American children, is failing American children. But as we look at African American children specifically, we talk about accountability, and what role do the parents have in all this?
I do think that the schools do need to work with parents, be truthful with them, and show them the problems that we're having. I don't think the average parent knows anything about what these test scores are based upon. One of the questions in first grade was, Mother is getting ready to go on a trip. What will she need? And there were 3 pictures, and one of the pictures was a trunk, and it was the old-fashioned kind of trunk. Now, my family used one of those.
Okay.
But most of the kids, they didn't understand that. They had no concept of what that trunk was, so they didn't mark the trunk, which was the right answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they have corrected that, I hope, by now.
Right.
But it's those types of things that not only the African American children, I don't think any of them were, most of them were not prepared for that kind of a thing, but I think there needs to be more working with the parents to let them see some of the activities that they could do at home with the children. That wouldn't take a lot of time. I used to take my children out on just beyond Allen Hospital. You would be in the country. We'd take a country road to the left and go a few miles and stop, and we'd look at identify birds. Of course, I had that up here at the college.
Mm-hmm.
And the red-winged, that's a red-winged blackbird, and discuss the differences between even heights of things, to get those concepts of taller, tallest.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that could be done with children like that. That the parents, I always said that I wouldn't mind mentoring parents after I retired. I would like to have a program where I could sit down with some young parents, but of course a lot of the parents were, I'd say, babies themselves when they had the children, and so they didn't really get the full extent of their own education. But I don't think anything that we teach, as far as when I was in school, taught us how to be parents, to do those kinds of things. I think we certainly need. I don't hear much of even home economics anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Those types of things, and where we did learn some things about parenting when I was in school, about even bathing a baby, and they'd have a real baby there, and all these kinds of things. But I think we need to do more with teaching how to parent, or giving them opportunities out in the community. Churches could get involved with parents. And
well, tell me this, because you got one last words of advice that you could offer to parents today as we look at education from a teacher's perspective. What would you say to the parents today that would be enlightening, uplifting, encouraging to them to foster their children's education?
I do think getting something in that home, letting children see you subscribe to some reading materials, not the best hairstyles and best dressed woman of the year or men or whatever that, and get stuff that have some substance and that they can relate to their families with that. I always subscribe for every one of my children a magazine. That was one of their Christmas gifts, whether it be my last grandchild. I got the Nickelodeon, I think, Junior. He was pretty young. I had it sent clear up to Minnesota, and he dearly loved that. And once they're looking forward, and this increases that love for learning. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but just get out there and make time for the children. I think that's the main thing. Make time for the children, and above all, I think teach them the proper things that are improper for their behavior.
Okay.
And reward them for the things that they do that are the right kind of things to do.
Okay.
But I do think their experiences. Take a trip out to Cincinnati to the Underground Railroad Freedom Center. It's marvelous. I guess I'm a kid at heart.
Yeah. Well, hey. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming in, taking the time, to share your experience with us in education as a teacher, because we all could benefit from your wisdom, and we appreciate you sharing it with us.
Yes,
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And it was a pleasure talking to you.
Yes.
Right?